Mazda CX-30 has been around for a while now, and look, it's still one of the best small SUVs that you can buy, but there's some things you really need to know about it, and there are some really good newer alternatives that you might want to consider. I'll touch on all of those things in this review and plenty more, so if you haven't already, please like, subscribe and ring the bell to keep up to date with all of my content, and let's get to it. Mazda Australia seems to have this mindset that it needs to offer multiple versions of its cars, and that might be great for a picky buyer because there are 9 different versions of the CX-30 that you can get, including 3 different powertrain options as well. So look, it might be great if you know exactly what you want, but it can also be confusing if you're not sure what you should be buying. And look, I'm not here to confuse you with all the different spec levels and trims that you need to know about. I'll just tell you that the range starts at about $33,000 before on-road costs and ranges all the way up to around 50 grand before on-road costs. And surprisingly, this is very unusual for me, I actually think you should just go for the top spec one if you can, because I'm not saying that the entry-level versions aren't great, but I reckon that the 2.5 litre engine, which is in the more expensive versions, is the one you should pick. And if you do choose one of the versions with that 2.5 litre engine that isn't the top spec version, you might actually still have to tick an options box to make it the best car it can be. For instance, this car here is the GT SP, so it's below the top of the range model, and it has the Vision Technology package option box ticked. It adds more money to the asking price and almost brings it in line with the top spec version anyway. So like I said, if you can afford the top spec version, the Estina G25 with all-wheel drive would be the one I would pick. I know that's the most expensive one, but that's just how it is. But otherwise, you can find a bit of value in the lower spec versions if that's what you're after. Now, let's talk about some options that you might otherwise want to consider from different brands. There's some good ones. All right, when it comes to alternatives to the Mazda CX-30, there are plenty of really good ones, but I'm just going to call out 3 that I think you should go and check out. Firstly, the Toyota Corolla Cross. It's an all-hybrid range. It's a more practical vehicle in terms of the interior space and the boot space, and it has impressive real-world fuel consumption. If I was going to go and buy a smallish SUV, that would be the one I would start with because I think it's a fantastic vehicle. Sure, you might have to pay a little bit more than the equivalent version of a CX-30, but you'll be saving money on fuel and you'll be getting Toyota, which is a pretty good thing in Australia where it has the broadest footprint of any brand in the market. So could be good for you, just depends on what you're after. The other option I reckon you should go and check out is the Hyundai Kona, and it's a fantastic choice if you are after something that is still compact but still spacious on the inside. It has petrol, it has turbo petrol, it has hybrid, and it has EV versions available. And it is a very interesting model range, very, very impressive. And they've just fixed one of the things that I hated about it, which was some of the safety tech. They've made a mute button for it, which is fantastic to see. Now, I reckon that it does stack up beautifully too, but if you're after something that's European, why not go and check out the Skoda Karoq? Now, it has 3 different grades available. The entry-level version is called Select, and it's pretty affordable, but there's also 2 sporty looking ones as well. The Sportline range now starts at the mid-spec and extends into the top spec with all-wheel drive and a punchy turbo engine. All of them are great to drive. All of them are pretty impressive in terms of interior space and practicality. And I would have any of those 3 options instead of this personally. But tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. Is there an alternative that I haven't called out that you would recommend? I'd love to know. What do you think about the look of the Mazda CX-30? To me, I'm still not sure. Even after all these years, I'm not sure whether it's a good looking car or not. It's very beaky. And it's got a lot of dark plastic around the wheel arches and the bottom half of the car. But in defiance of that design language that screams, I want to be an SUV, there's no roof rails on this car, which I think would add some extra practicality for someone who wants to fit a set of racks or a roof basket or something like that. That might be something that you want to look into. Okay, so the rear end design, again, I'm still not sold on it, even after all these years, but hey, it's the boot that's the big story with this car, or maybe the small story. Let's have a look. Okay, so this one is the second from the top spec, and you still don't get an electric tailgate. Not ideal, I don't think, for this kind of money. And in the boot, you can see that it's a pretty decent space. It's not the best in this class, not by any stretch of the imagination. You'll see the number on your screen now, and that means that you can fit a pram and some small bags, but you might struggle if you have 2 toddler age kids and you need to fit all their stuff in for a weekend away or something like that. So you've got little storage sections on the sides, you've got a little hook down there for a cargo net, and you've got another one on the other side, and you've also got a light on this side with another little storage tray. No shopping bag hooks, I don't like that. And underneath the boot floor, you do have a spare wheel, a space saver, and I do like that. I think that adds a little bit of practicality to this car that some of the rivals don't offer, and it could be a decision maker for you. I like the interior of the Mazda CX-30, I always have, and I think that it does still have a pretty nice design to it, despite the fact that it isn't necessarily feeling any newer than some of the rivals out there, and is maybe feeling a little bit outdated in some respects. So you still do get a digital element to the driver info display. You can see there, that middle part is digital, these parts are analog on the side, and you also get head-up display in this grade. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. There it is there. And look, I think that that's good to have, and the controls are all very simple to use. You've got a couple of steering wheel controls that you'll find will be very easy to navigate. And I like this steering wheel. It's got a lovely leather finish on it, and it's nice in the hand as well. Although it does have a slightly sharp edge to it. So holding onto it for hours and hours, you might find that your little fingies get a little bit sore. But look, the other element of this car that I think is decent, but maybe not brilliant, is this media screen up here. So you can use the rotary dial controller to interact with it. Unless you're using Apple CarPlay, then you can use it as a touchscreen if you need to. And you can also still interact with it with this controller down here. But otherwise, the screen is pretty good. You do have a decent array of menus available to you. In fact, if I get back to the home screen, okay, so this menu screen is pretty good. There's a fair bit of information available to you. You can keep an eye on your fuel economy, and there's also things like your entertainment. So that's your radio menus and your Bluetooth, all that sort of stuff. And then below that, there's also another menu for communication. So that's your Bluetooth again. Don't know why you need two of those. There is a sat-nav system built into this car as well. And just be mindful that if you are using Apple Maps or Google Maps, it might have a bit of a clash between the sat-nav systems. Now in this settings menu, there is plenty of different settings you can play with to configure the car to your needs or your requirements. I won't go through all of it because it'll just take an hour. So look, I think that it's good that there is the control system available with this rotary dial controller. You get used to that pretty easy. You've also got a volume knob down there as well, but you don't have any knobs up here apart from your climate control knobs. So if I just turn that on, so yes, you've got dual zone climate control in this spec, which is good to see. This spec also gets the heated seats and also a heated steering wheel as well. And look, I love the fact that that is so clear, so simple, so easy to use, and it actually feels pretty nice to touch as well. Now, one thing that I've never really loved about the interior of the CX-30 is this strange sort of finish to these vents. It just doesn't look like they thought this whole section through. Lots of other brands have managed to come up with some sort of really creative design for the vents, but maybe I'm just being nitpicky. In fact, I know I'm just being nitpicky. Now, this interior is the red leather finish, and you might love that. Or you might think that it looks really wrong with the brown exterior paint like this car has. I'd be in the same school of thought as you if that was what you were thinking. And look, there are bottle holders in the doors. You've got some cup holders down here, a wireless phone charger as well, and you've got a pretty decent size center console bin with a divider down there. There's USB-C ports in there for charging. So if you need to run a cable to the back, you probably could. And this also slides forward if you want to have a little bit of a movement to your armrest. Yes, I think it's pretty good. You've got an auto-dimming rear vision mirror in this grade. You've also got this sunroof and a little sunglasses holder, which apparently is much desired. I never use it. I don't wear sunnies that often. And you also get illuminated vanity mirrors. Hello. And a little light up there too, which is nice. So I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty nice, and I think it feels pretty plush. But let's check out the back seat, shall we? All right, so this driver's seat is set for my driving position. I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot. I'm wearing shorts today. It's a warm day. And yes, my bare old knees are touching the seat in front. I've got a little bit of foot room down there. It's pretty good for wiggling, in fact, but it's certainly not the most spacious back row experience. Let me show you the headspace. Look, this car has the sunroof, as you can see, and that means that it does have, well, limited headroom here, but it does even out a little bit more at the back. It's still not the most spacious second row experience though, and in fact lots of other SUVs in this class do have more space. So if you're after a more spacious vehicle, make sure you hit the playlist link in the description below and you can check out all my small SUV reviews. There's like heaps of them. All right, so what else do we need to talk about in here? So you've got ISOFIX points down in the window seats. Yes, they do have covers for them. I've taken them off because I had my daughter's seat in here before, and that meant that I did have to move the seat forward just a little bit, so you can see they're not aligned, and she could still reach and kick the seat ahead. So look, you're gonna have to really consider whether this is gonna be the right size for your needs if you do have a 3-year-old like I do, because they might actually do a bit of damage to the back of your lovely red leather seats. And look, you can make up your own mind about the color obviously, but there's only a map pocket on this side. Those are the covers for the ISOFIX points. There's bottle holders in the doors. You do get a pair of air vents down here, but no charge ports. There's a bit of a transmission tunnel intrusion. Don't get a map pocket on this side. And between the seats, there's no charge ports either, but you do get a pair of cup holders. So I guess that's okay, but it's certainly not setting any new standards in the small SUV segment. Starting to show its age a little bit, hey? As I mentioned, there are a few different options available in the CX-30 lineup when it comes to the powertrain choices. So the entry-level versions are called G20, and they have a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine, not turbocharged. Comes as standard with a 6-speed auto, and it's front-wheel drive only. Those outputs are pretty modest, if you ask me. And then there's the G25 models, which I think are the more impressive and appealing versions. It's a 2.5-litre non-turbo petrol engine as well, with a 6-speed auto and front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, if that's what you need. It does add a bit more performance and a bit more likability to the drive experience in my opinion, but still no hybrids, and that might not necessarily mean it ticks the box for you. I could totally understand that. Now, if you're wondering about towing capacity, there is towing capacity available on all versions of the CX-30. You'll see the numbers on your screen now, but I'm not towing in this review. We're just going to go for a drive and I'll tell you what it's like to live with. Let's go. One of the most enjoyable things about driving the Mazda CX-30 is, well, compared to newer rivals, you don't have to turn off safety systems to be able to live with this car on a daily basis. You can just get in and drive. And while that might seem like a pretty silly thing to really like about a car, when you drive enough cars like I do, it does stand out. And look, there are other things that stand out about the CX-30 in terms of the drive experience. It is definitely a more enthusiastic car in corners than some of the other vehicles out there. It's a bit more of a driver's friend than anything else, but look, you might find that the drive experience is really joyful and really fun, but look, I think that there are elements that could be better in terms of the drive experience. Primarily, it's the ride that I don't like. It's a firmly sprung vehicle. It feels lots of the road surface, and you know, it transmits the road surface into the cabin. So if you like the feeling of being really in touch with every little stone and pebble on the road, yes, this might be fine for you, but for me, I just think that there are cars out there that do it better in terms of a balance between comfort and control, and that's just my thoughts on this vehicle. Now I'm going to go over Bumpy Street, which is in my area. It's just a street that I like to test on, which does throw up a few lumps and bumps into the cabin, and you do get thrown around a bit more in this car than in other vehicles in this segment. So it's just perhaps not as subtle or supple over small bumps and lumps in the road surface as you might appreciate. So for me, the ride, that's my main sort of dislike with it. As well as that, I don't necessarily love this 2.5-litre engine. It's definitely more joyful than the 2-litre base model engine, which, I mean, it's fine in most situations. It's just when you actually want a bit more grunt, you don't have it with that 2-litre. Whereas with this, the 2.5, you do have a bit more grunt. And if you really, really want to find as much from this engine as you can, there's a manual modes and paddle shifters as well if you wish to take matters into your own hands to that extent. And you can also flick the switch and put it into sport mode, and it will behave a little bit more enthusiastically. Like, it makes for a pretty fun car in the corners, more fun than probably a small SUV arguably needs to be if it's not a sporty small SUV. This is not really a sporty small SUV, but it drives a bit more sportily than some of the other cars out there. It's just this engine Like, you don't have that low down torque push that you get from turbocharged engines or even from hybrid powertrains these days. So it just means that you do have to rev it a bit harder to get the most out of it. And if you're okay with that, if you don't mind revving your engine, good on you. But for me, I think that I'm a bit more of a turbo fan. So not a turbo fan, not a literal fan for a turbo, but a fan of turbocharged engines. Dad joke. Now, look, otherwise, the other things that I like about it is the steering. It does have a really nice direct steering feel to it, and it's got a fair bit of weight and feel through the wheel as well. Like, you can actually feel what's happening when you do change direction, and like in other cars, you might not actually have that sensation emitted to your little digits. So that's good. And the ride, like I said, a bit sporty, bit firm, and the road noise is another consideration. Like, suspension noise as well, apparently. If you do a lot of highway driving on coarse chip surfaces, you will notice that it is loud in here. That's a bit of a bugbear across Mazda's model range, in my opinion, is that it can be a little bit loud on the inside. Maybe not living up to the semi-premium desire factor that some Mazda buyers think is there, but maybe those Mazda buyers haven't driven any of the other options out there and they're just sold on a Mazda. That's fine. I get it. I can understand why, if you've had a Mazda before, you would want to get into another one because it feels familiar to you. And this, in that regard, does have that same sort of characteristic as the Mazda 3s of years gone by. And I can totally understand why you might go for it. But for me, I just don't gel too well with this drive experience more generally. And finally, I just want to call out the visibility from the driver's seat. So over shoulder, it's okay. You do have this fantastic surround view system if you buy one of the cars that has that. Otherwise, you get a pretty good reversing camera. And look, I think that the big issue here, though, is actually more to do with higher speed driving than it is about parking speeds. So it's got a non-convex mirror, so it's just a plain mirror on that side, and that means that you don't get as good a view on the driver's side as you do on the passenger side, which has a convex mirror. And that convex mirror does give you a better field of view behind you, and it means that when you're merging to the left, you can actually see what's going on. But if you are going to overtake or merge on the right or whatever it may be on the freeway, you just need to pay a little bit more attention. Sure, it's got blind spot monitoring, which is good, but it bloody needs it, because otherwise it could be dangerous. I've had a few near misses in Mazdas in recent times, and I think it's something really simple that they could fix, but for some reason they don't. All right, let's talk about fuel efficiency. Now, Mazda has built a name for itself around fuel efficiency being one of the traits of the brand, and there are 3 different fuel efficiency numbers that you need to pay attention to for the CX-30 range. So the G20, that 2-litre engine, you'll see the number for it on your screen, and now I'll put up the G25 in 2-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, so you can see for yourself what you can theoretically expect to achieve across a mix of different driving scenarios. And if you're wondering what I've achieved across a mix of driving that might be similar to what you end up doing in your car, things like a bit of freeway, a bit of highway, some urban roads, some stop-starts, some shopping trips, and the usual errands that we all have to run, you'll see what I've seen across this week of testing on your screen now. And look, I think that that's okay, but certainly not as impressive as if you were to buy a hybrid SUV like some of those ones I mentioned earlier, where you can sort of get a lot less than that in terms of fuel consumption. But hey, you might be fine with it, and that's totally cool. And another great thing about this car is that it does run on 91 RON regular unleaded petrol, and both the front wheel drive and the all-wheel drive versions have pretty decent fuel tank capacity as well, which you can see on your screen. So yeah, it's not bad, just not brilliant. But hey, it's not a brand new car either. This car achieved the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating in 2019, and it's still valid, and all versions come with a decent amount of safety technology and equipment, things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's lane keeping assistance, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, rear parking sensors, and a reversing camera as standard. If you step up from the base grade, you also get front parking sensors, and if you step up even further, you get things like front cross traffic alert, and there's also a really good surround view system in the camera if you choose the versions that have the vision technology package, which also adds some extra stuff like traffic jam assist, and it is available across different grades in the lineup. Look, my advice to you is make sure you do your due diligence and choose the version that you think you'll get the most out of, and the fact that you can get that safety pack on lower grade versions is actually pretty appealing. But hey, other brands out there now have more standard safety spec across the range, so it just depends on what you're after, really. And when it comes to airbag coverage, there's dual front, front side, front knee, and also curtain coverage for both rows of occupants. Mazda Australia offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty. You also get 5 years of roadside assistance included as well. And there's a 5-year cap price servicing plan. Now, importantly, with the most recent update to the CX-30, the service intervals are now a bit longer. They are 15,000 kilometres and every 12 months. They used to be every 10,000 Ks. And the average cost over the 5-year cap price servicing plan is about $435 per visit. And hey, keep this in mind, if you are considering getting a Mazda, the brand offers a finance program with a guaranteed future value as well. So you'll be able to see what the car will be worth at the end of your loan term, which I think is a really good thing to consider for your ownership costs. I reckon the Mazda CX-30 still does offer a pretty compelling case compared to some of the rivals out there, but it isn't feeling as new or fresh as, well, some of the ones I mentioned, and also it doesn't have the hybrid tech that you might want or an EV version. So tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. Do you reckon the CX-30 still stacks up? I'd love to know your thoughts, and which version would you buy? Do you agree that the top spec is the only one to go for? I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, like, subscribe and ring the bell, and it will help out my channel a lot. Thank you so much if you've done that already. It means the world to me, and I'll see you in the next one.